I move around here, I think he is still on the hunt for Hosana.
I am indeed. I'm still trying to find these naughty cats. Now, I went exactly where I last saw him. He's not there, but then I had Francolin's alarm calling in this direction, so I'm just checking all of these areas. But as you can see, it's not exactly here. It's a difficult place. Sorry, Rusty. I do apologize. You're right there. You're right there, right? Okay. So we're trying to negotiate these thorns at the moment. So I can hear some Francolins flying here to my right, so I think that must be where these cubs are. Now, can I negotiate this? Yes, we should be fine here. So it is, like I say, very dense, very thick, and not easy to negotiate. But if you're a leopard, this is the perfect place to be. So let's see, maybe we get lucky and they're somewhere on the bank here. So Xbox Freak, you're wondering how rare leopards are in the Sabi Sands. Well, not that rare in the Sabi Sands. We're very fortunate in that we get to see leopards fairly regularly in the Sabi Sands. The perfect kind of environment for them. You've got these two rivers with rich soils that it's great habitat for prey species, and so there's a lot of prey animals that hang around in these areas, and so it's the perfect place for a leopard to sustain itself. That, coupled with the fact that you've got beautiful thickets that run along these riverbeds, is great leopard habitat. So leopards are numerous, and in many parts of the world they actually are numerous, but the problem is that they generally are shy and reclusive. So exactly how we're struggling now to find them again is the problem, is that people get fleeting glimpses of a leopard every now and then in some areas, and it's really tough to actually spend time with them. But here we're very fortunate in that these leopards are quite habituated, so they're used to people in vehicles and the sound of the vehicles, the sound of us talking from a car, and so they don't actually then run away and disappear. In some parts of Africa, if you had to drive like you're doing now, you would end up in a situation where you can hear the Francolins in front here again, so one they're not this side, where they hear the vehicle run away immediately. Right, so I believe James up and with the kill, so let's go back to him and see what he's up to.
Here we are, everybody. We're back with the lion. We've done a little sort of 180-degree flip around. We have a flat cat, at least we can see an ear now, a heaving belly. And I think for the next little while we'll just sit here and see if we can't coax the youngsters out. Perhaps they'll come back and start feeding again. They may or may not. Time will tell. And then we'll press on. It's quite a nice picture there of the the colours of the red of the kill there and the purple of the Vernonia flowers. It's a bit morbid, I suppose. Anyway, here we are, and I have other news for you about our other characters. Thandi and Tamba are unfortunately to the south of where we're allowed to go, but they're happy and reunited and well. Still no word of Karula, I'm afraid. It is just a most beautiful morning. It's a bit of a breeze. I think there must be a cold front coming through the country, but it's just a very crystal lovely morning. So we'll sit here for a little while and wait and see if the cubs don't come out. And if they don't, we'll go and do a little foray onto Cheetah Plains and see what we can see that part of the world. Remember, any questions? Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. That is the best way to get hold of us. Indeed, I believe it to be the possibly, no, not quite the oldest way, but best way to get hold of us. And it's a Of course, when we get to this position, one does struggle slightly to find interesting things to say when the cat is being so deeply uninteresting, but that's okay, that's its prerogative. Kirk, you say, what kind of carcass is it? Well, that does actually bring us quite a nice discussion. Since if we can have a look at the hoof sticking into the air there, that is a waterbuck. And the waterbuck, Cobus ellipsiprimnus, is renowned apparently for not being tasteful to lions. Lions don't like eating them, and that's because they have an aromatic oil underneath the skin that makes them smell like a tack room. Now, I don't know if you know what a tack room smells like, but it smells like sweaty leather, basically. Anyway, the sweaty leather smell doesn't actually put lions off. It's a complete sort of misconception that has been created. Lions will very happily eat waterbuck, and that's what they've killed here. So I'm sure some of you would have heard that lions don't like to eat waterbuck. Well, it so happens that they do, and they will eat waterbuck, and that oil that produces the sort of leathery smell, which I find very pleasant, some people find unpleasant, is probably an oil to keep them waterproofed to a certain extent when they are in the water, trying to escape the water. And then, of course, also to help them follow each other, I suspect, when they're running through the bush away from something. I've often wondered about that, though. I mean, it's the same as the theory behind the fetlock gland on the Impala, which the next time you see, you will notice they have sort of black glands on the backs of their fetlocks. Oh, the lion is turning over. There's high action here. Whew. How to contain our excitement. And we're now looking at the grass for some reason. Senzo, is there any reason we're looking at the grass? Where was I? Oh, yes. If the waterbuck can smell each other and the impala can smell each other, I'm fairly sure that there must be a predator that's evolved to smell too. So I'm not sure that it holds water necessarily, that they use the smell to follow each other. Then let's go back to the lion, and we'll just have a look and see there. There we are. And as we do that, Priscilla is saying that lions tend to have more skin issues and parasites than the other cats, and why is that? Priscilla, I'm not sure that that's true. I know that lions certainly can give human beings who handle them various kinds of unpleasantnesses, like liver flukes and that sort of thing, but I don't know that they're necessarily more parasite-riddled than leopards or hyenas. I wouldn't have thought so. I think they probably just look like that. Then their skin condition, I think you'll find, might be slightly poorer than leopards, but that's going to be on account of the fact that they fight each other all the time. Their faces will constantly have scars on them. There will be constant wounds, open wounds, often on the face and on parts of their bodies, because their lives are a lot more physically demanding than something like a leopard's. Leopards stalk very close to their prey. It'll normally be something smaller or lighter than they are, not always, but normally, and they will very seldom take prey at full speed. They might be going at full speed, but it's highly unlikely the prey will be, so the prey is surprised. A lion, however, while they operate in a similar fashion, will take much heavier prey because there are more of them, but if one of them has to make the initial takedown, one of them has got to make the initial sort of attack, and it's often done at full stretch, at full speed. So if you think of them initially taking a buffalo or waterbuck or something like that, or zebra, they catch them at full stretch, and one of them's got to take down the prey before the rest jump on top. Now that brings with it a certain amount of physical demand. If you're a lioness like this, and you're chasing after 300 kilogram zebra, that's a 660 pound zebra, that's an animal almost 3 times your mass, then inevitably there are going to be injuries and scuff marks and grazes that come along with the initial takedown. But you can afford to take that risk, of course, because if you do take it, your mates will come and help you to kill the animal in question, and you will then have something to eat. So I think that's why you'll find that they look slightly worse for wear than the leopards. Geeky Beth, you're wondering about, based on, I'm not sure how to answer your question. You're basically saying which animals have the most nutritional value for the lions, but there's a caveat there, or an addition to your question about which ones are the most difficult to catch. So I'm not really sure how to answer both of those. Anyway, the most difficult to catch are giraffe and buffalo. Buffalo the most, because they are very strong, really strong. They're much heavier than the lions. And I think the nutritional status of their prey depends largely on what the prey's been eating. And we know that, of course, because we had that incident, we had that time, that experience with the Nkuhuma pride, where the young Nkuhumas, many of them died, or two of them died, of white muscle disease brought about by the fact that the lions were eating buffalo that were not eating sufficiently good food, and that means that the lions weren't getting sufficient nutrition, and two of them died as a result. Now, I don't think the size of the prey's got anything to do with that. I think that if they'd been eating impala exclusively, that probably would have had the same problem. I think that the lack of variation in the diet probably caused an issue. So I don't think that it's possible to say that any one animal has got more nutritional value to the lions than any other animal. Does that answer your question? If it doesn't, let us know. #SafariLive. Mohammed, you say they're parts of the carcass the lions would avoid eating. Not if they were desperate, no, Mohammed. But if they were not desperate, so if they had been eating like they had during the drought, when they were eating buffalo left, right, and center, they would normally avoid bits that are too hard to get into, so they often left the forelimbs out, the front legs, which are quite difficult and bony and don't have a great deal of muscle. They didn't bother to eat away at the meat on the face quite often, which can be quite good. They will always, however, avoid the stomach contents. So while they will absolutely eat the stomach, they will eat the intestines, they will avoid the stomach contents. But otherwise, anything that they can eat, they will eat. They don't eat the skin. The skin is fairly indigestible, especially on a big thing like a buffalo. They don't eat the hooves. The hooves are completely indigestible. And so, yeah, they don't, I mean, there are various bits and pieces that they won't eat. But bones, meat, organs, ligaments, tendons, all of that sort of thing they will eat with relish. Well, I think that cat is thoroughly fast asleep, so we'll do one little drive forward, see if we can't spot the youngsters, and if we cannot, I think we'll head on to Cheetah Plains and see if we can't find, well, something interesting going on there. What say you? Good? Good. Senzo, let's go a little bit forward here. And just be aware the line might roll over, which will provide us with an enormous amount of entertainment. Oh, she's looked up. Might also get a slightly better view of the carcass from here. Fairly unpleasant vegetation to drive through around here. Can you see the others? The others went skittling through here, and very strange behavior for them to have moved away from us at all. You know, given that lions are generally not afraid of us in the vehicles. Alright, I think we're going to leave the sighting, everybody. I'm not sure where the other lions are. I'm a little bit worried that they were nervous of us. So we're going to press on from here. And while we do that, Jamie apparently is on the equivalent of Route 66 for ants.
Route 66 if you're an ant. And oh my word, Dave and I are playing Let's Not Whack Jamie on the Head with the antenna, the bushwalk antenna, walking like this. Let me show you what I mean about the fact that we have the equivalent of Route 66. Every time I walk along this road, I'm always amazed by it, and I think it's just the sheer industriousness of these little creatures that absolutely astounds me. So what we have here is a series of holes, and underneath the surface of this road, and we are walking on the road because it's the easiest way to pick up tracks, underneath the surface of this road is an entire ants colony, an ants nest that probably extends for kilometers in terms of distance and area. And they're tiny, tiny, tiny little ants, really absolutely minute little red things. And yet, what they've done is they've created these astounding highways between the various entrances and exit points of their various holes. And I find that amazing, that this trail here, that leads all the way to the next hole, has been made by the stomping of tiny, tiny, tiny little feet. And they really are. I mean, these ants are about 1 millimeter long. And yet the passage of thousands of their feet over time has created a rut in the road. And you can see that it's an ant trail, not something like a snake, just because, well, first of all, it goes from this hole over here all the way along to here. And in certain places along this road, you can actually see the networks really clearly. So they've made this highway. There's no stones out of place or anything. The earth's just that little bit compacted from the passage of tiny feet. And this one goes here. This one's slightly more indistinct because it's been stomped on by various animals, but the track is there. And then this one, again, it's been slightly messed up by animal tracks and by human tracks, but onto the next little hole. And so on and so forth. And the fact that they create these little highways, trails laid down by the sort of pheromones, by whichever ant happens to lead the way, and they follow that totally without deviating from that particular route. Here's another one. And this is probably all the same ant nest because it's the same species. All the way along. Can you see the ants there? Look how tiny they are. Tiny, tiny, tiny little creatures. And they've made a track. They have made a beautiful, smooth track in the road. Just think about the time and the amount of activity that it's taken to wear that track into the road. That's crazy. I find that absolutely astounding. I always have. And there's nothing like seeing the tracks of matabele ants as well, which obviously are much larger. Tim, you say you need an ant farm. I think it would be fascinating to have an ant farm. Probably more entertaining than having a pet millipede, I suppose. But an ant farm, to watch the industriousness of the ants, absolutely, I agree with you. Okay, a herd of zebras destroyed most of this, so I can't show you any more along here. But you get the idea. Route 66, from place to place to place to place. It's very, very cool. Tommy, you want to know what I'm wearing around my ankles? Tommy, it is the latest in bush fashion. I am setting a bush trend. Isn't it attractive? No, they're called gaiters, and they're mainly because I have ruined several pairs of socks thanks to the grass seeds. You'd think, no, you could just sit and pick them out after a walk. You can't. Ask Dave. Dave is also wearing them. Wait, there we go. Dave's going to show you. Dave with slightly more appropriate foot apparel this time around. Hey, Dave. actual shoes. So they're gaiters. The nicest ones are actually the ones that Dave is wearing, the sort of the canvasy ones. Unfortunately, me being me, I find it very difficult to find any that don't immediately slip off my barely existent ankles. So these are kids' ones that I managed to find. It's not built with particularly stocky legs, as you may have noticed. So those are gaiters for keeping ticks and grass seeds out of my socks. There's somebody who knows plenty about ticks and tick bites and keeping them off your skin, or not keeping them off your skin. I think you should go and see exactly who I'm talking about.
Well, indeed, Jamie, I think between myself and Steph, we are just a maze of tick bites. I seem to really love the two of us. I don't know why. It's a horrible thing to have, and luckily for Brett, he doesn't have it. So the ticks seem to avoid him. I'm not sure why, but myself and Steph get absolutely punished by them. But there are a few ways that you can get rid of them. A couple of trees that work really well to be able to beat them. Oh, hello. Oh, hello. We've got a whole flock of crested francolins that are sitting on next to the road here. Now I'm sure these are all the ones that have been getting disturbed by the leopards this morning. So these are the ones that were shouting a little bit earlier that I was talking about. And you'll often know when there's a predator around like a leopard when they sit in trees like this. So they go up into the trees just for safety, because from there they can spot the leopard down on the ground and be able to fly away before it comes. If there was a predator from the sky, so something like a martial eagle or one of the birds of prey, you'll find that these francolins will go down and they'll go into a thicket to try and then hide away. But you can see that they're not calling now, which means that these crested francolins don't know where those leopards are, and so it's probably just because the vehicle has come that they've jumped up on there, and you'll slowly but surely see them all dropping down onto the ground. But it's a little while since I've seen so many of them all packed up together on the same branch. Generally everybody tries to find a different branch, and you can see they're not very agile in a tree. They don't perch very well. They're designed more for being on the ground. And this will be a female and male with their young ones from this year, so you can see that some of them, the markings are not quite right, so it's just getting their proper adult coloration and their plumage that they will then start looking exactly like the adults within a few months. So nice to see. Pity there's not a leopard somewhere around here as well, because that would be nice. These guys would have been shouting and it would have made us a lot easier for us to find them. Now I've checked everywhere where I can think of for Hasana and Shangila, but it is so thick and dense in there, we could be driving right past them. So I think we're going to call it this morning. We had a spectacular start with them, with the wild dogs, and I've managed to see Hasana on foot as well, which is a nice little extra for me. But we're going to probably leave them now and see what else we can go and find. It's now starting to warm up a little bit. We've dispensed with our jerseys, and so we're probably going to go and check around at some of the water holes and just see if maybe some ellies have arrived and are coming to have a drink. And I might also just go pop into the hyena den quickly as well. So onward and forward. Now where we're going in the direction that we're heading is where the francolins kept calling ahead of us. So maybe Hassan and Shangila might just pop out in front of us as well. It is towards sort of Terrapins that we're heading, which is another favorite of theirs. So it's possible that we might still find them. We will hold on to hope, but I think it's going to be better to try this afternoon. As it heats up, they might get pushed towards a water hole and it'll be much easier then. And like I was saying, you can see on the right hand side here, this is what we're dealing with. So it is very, very, very dense. It's thick bush inside there, and for a leopard it is the perfect habitat. So even when I was walking and we bumped into Hasana so close with a vehicle, we'd have to almost drive on top of them to be able to spot them in that. So I think this afternoon will be a better plan. Like I say, I'm sure they'll be out and about this afternoon, but I'm hoping just maybe that James, on his way back from Chitwa after he's finished with the lions, maybe just takes a turn past Twin Dams and he might get lucky, or the Mulawati. The Mulawati might be a good place to check as well, so maybe James will get lucky on his way home. But what a spectacular start to the morning. It was all very chaotic to start, and it's been an incredible drive so far. We've had lions and leopards and wild dogs. It's been very good. Now I believe James has found some tracks of his own. So from Jamie looking at tracks to me trying to track Hasana, now James is getting in on the action, and there's a few tracks to show you.
Favorite haunt there at 3 in a row pan. So we're going to go around to the pan and have a look there. See if we can't spot him lying in his favourite marula tree. His favourite marula tree, in which I have never seen him lying, but I'm assured is where he likes to be. And I don't know if any of you were on the drive at the time, but there's a little water reservoir over here. Senzor, let us see the water reservoir. There it is. And it's not a particularly nice piece of Cheetah Plains. In fact, it might be the very worst piece of Cheetah Plains. But anyway, inside it, quarantine male leopard was mating with Inkanieni, the female leopard whose tracks I also saw. They're going the other way, though, so I thought we'd follow his. I believe that was quite a sighting. Again, I was not present for it. You're wondering about leopards swimming and whether they like to swim or whether they avoid going into water. They're actually very good swimmers. Excellent swimmers, in fact. And while they don't necessarily choose to go swimming in the way that you and I might of a hot day, they certainly can swim very well. And they do swim very well. So if they have to cross over water bodies, and I think the big story, or the great story about it, is that when Lake Kariba was formed on the Zambezi River, on the borders between Zambia and Zimbabwe, I say it was formed, it's a dam, so when it started to fill up, a whole lot of islands were left in the middle of what is now Lake Kariba, and there were animals on them, and the leopards used to swim out to the islands and grab whatever sort of their meals, so they can swim very well. Lions can swim too. They tend to enjoy it slightly less, I think. Oh, I don't see quarantine here. Anyway, we'll carry on. And the leopard, although leopards will put up with water, they do display that kind of cattish behavior sometimes of not enjoying having their feet wet, and they'll do that kind of. We've watched Karula do that a few times, and even Hosana and Shongile, who spend a lot of their time lurking around the water. Well, if they're going to go in, then it's fine, but if they're going to just kind of get their feet wet, then no, they don't like it so much. Let's keep going this way, just on the off chance. Otherwise, Cheetah Plains has delivered one herd of Impala, and not a great deal else at this stage. We're going to make our way into the clearings before turning round back for Djuma. But at least we have got some signal. The signal seems to be relatively reliable, which is very, very positive indeed. I can't remember the last time when I saw quarantine male leopard was. Daniel, there are some quillias. Oh, they've obviously flown away. Why would they stay around here? They're in those trees there, Senzo, while we answer Daniel's question. Daniel, you're wondering about permanent water and why we don't see it flowing here. I think they're in there, aren't they? Let's just keep looking there. Daniel, there are two permanent rivers that flow through the Sabi Sand. One is the, unsurprisingly, Sabi River, and the next, equally unsurprisingly, the Sand River. They are south of where we are now, and they do carry water all year round. Then there are a few that are... Oh, look. There's a little bee-eater just to the left there. Yeah. Beautiful little bird on the left-hand side of that bush. Yeah, just zoom in there. Keep going. Left a bit. Right a bit, and up a bit. That's it. Now zoom in there. You can just see that greenish patch. Can you see the green patch in the middle of there? There he is. Beautiful. Daniel, there is also a perennial, or not a perennial, an annual river known as the Manyeleti, which runs pretty much from Elephant Plains down through to the bottom. Well, it comes from outside the borders of the Sabi Sand, but that flows after heavy rains, and there's always water under the sand there. And then we have the smaller tributaries like the Umluamati drainage that Tristan has been toing and froing across today, which will flow only in the case of a serious deluge. And that's just how it is out here. These rivers, probably like the Manuleti, probably used to flow a lot more than they do now, as did the Sand and Sabi rivers before the advent of humanity and agriculture, which of course sucks an enormous amount of water out of the rivers. Oh, look, Senzo, just behind you. He's flown. There was another little bee-eater sitting just behind us. We didn't notice him. Oh, that's gorgeous. Isn't that a lovely bird? And it eats, unsurprisingly, bees. Righty, let's move on from the bee-eater. Now, Naturable, you want a brown-headed parrot. Well, this is not a bad place for brown-headed parrots, Cheetah Plains, so we might be able to try and find you a brown-headed parrot. The way they are normally found is by the screeching metallic call, which is not unlike the sound made by the scratching of nails on chalkboards. Reminds me, I need to order a chalkboard today for the tent. But yes, we could easily find some brown-headed parrots around here. There could be some in the trees around here because there are lots of trees with holes in them, and that's where they like to nest. And in fact I've had a wonderful sighting on this very road of brown-headed parrots. So Naturable, I will do my best to find your brown-headed parrot. For those of you who don't know, the brown-headed parrot is the only parrot that we get here. Its most obvious feature being not its brown head, but its bright green back. I'll just turn off up ahead here and we'll have a listen and see if we can't hear one. Plenty of quilias everywhere, and as many of you will know, that clouds of quilias have taken to the clearings because of all the grass seeds there. No parrots just yet, Naturable. Laurie, you're wondering about my favorite winter bird, I think. Well, it's the same as my favorite summer bird, really. It's the robin. The white-browed scrub robin that we get here. I'm not sure, well, I am sure why, but it's the same reason as my favorite bird, always has been my favorite bird, and that's because it just always reminds me of when I was living in the city, and there was a Cape robin that used to sit on the garden tap outside my window and just remind me of the wilderness. All through the winter it used to sit there and call and remind me of the wilderness. Alrighty, Tristan has got something that might be his favourite bird. It's certainly Shongile's favourite bird, and it's having a swim.
Well, it's not my favorite bird, James, but it is Shongile's, and they've all disappeared, unfortunately. It was the white-faced whistling ducks, and they were running down the road, the little ones with the adults as well. I'm sure they've tried to duck into a thicket here just to get away from me, but the really interesting part about it was that the one adult actually came in front of the little ones, and while the little ones were running, the adult came towards us and it feigned injury, so it acted like it had a broken wing, and they do that to be able to try and draw attention to the adult and not the chicks, and so it stops that predator. So let's say we were Shongile and we were busy hunting them, she would have come closer towards Shongile and feigned this broken wing, so Shongile's attention would then go to the adult and the little chicks have time to run away. It was really amazing to see, but unfortunately, as you guys came across to us, they all ran into the bush, and that was the end of that, so we don't see them anymore. But I'm sure they're coming towards Terrapon now that this morning has been disturbed by wild dogs and leopards. It's a better bet to get towards Terrapon and stay away from that area today. Still no sign of Shongile or Hasana. They must still be close to where I saw Hasana on foot. I'm sure they're just sitting in some shade now. It's gotten quite warm, so it'll be a perfect place to go and sit in shade and relax. And I would imagine this afternoon, if they're not at Terrapins, they will be at Twin Dams in that area. So I'm sure we will find them this afternoon, which is good news. But I still can't believe how Hasana becomes so close. He's really was super interested in who I was and what I was doing. Normally with a leopard, when you find them on foot, is they'll actually move away from you and they try and kind of get out of the way, and then they watch you, or they just sit hidden and watch you walk past. But Hasana was really intrigued. He just wanted to see what I was. Now over there we've got something that both Hasana and Shongile would like to hunt. There is a baby, well, not a baby, a little Steenbok sitting in the long grass. So there we go. Now Steenboks obviously are quite sort of difficult to find. They tend to be very skittish and very flighty, and so normally when you stop a vehicle they end up running away, but luckily this one is quite far away, so we get to have a look. Now I can't see nicely if it's a male or a female just because of how far it is. Let me get my binoculars. But if it's a male, it will have little horns. Female, no horns. Now interestingly enough, it's a little female. There should be a male around here somewhere, but these Steenbok are monogamous, so once they find a mate they will stay together for life unless a predator takes the mate out, in which case they'll then start looking for another one. But otherwise there'll be another one somewhere close by, and a Steenbok tends to hold quite a small territory, so it shouldn't be too far away. Now the problem with the small territory is that predators can find you easily when you defecate or urinate, because they know if there's urine or defecation that somewhere close by that Steenbok will be sitting. So a Steenbok is a very clever animal. It digs a little hole and it will urinate and defecate in that hole, and then it covers it up with sand so that it masks that scent to a predator. So a predator comes along and it doesn't actually pick up where the dung or urine is, and it will keep going and then move past the Steenbok. But the interesting thing is that other Steenbok know straight away when they see that sort of hoof scraping that is a territorial marker for them, and they'll actually then dig it up, and as they dig it up there will be all that scent underneath the ground that they're able to then sniff and smell and work out what's going on. So it's a really clever system. It's almost like coded messages in the bush, so very, very clever indeed. Now they are quite common in this area, but like I say, we don't see them that often, or don't get to show you them that often because of their sort of skittish nature. Generally, as soon as you stop a vehicle they feel like they're being watched, and then they'll try and bound away. Now what I suspect is happening with this Steenbok is that it knows that we're here, but it's trying to stay still in a hope that we just miss it and carry on going past. So it probably thinks that we're looking at something else because we're quite far away. If we were much closer you would have found that it probably would have just bolted and would have run away from us. Now for those of you who don't know what Steenbok means, Steen is an Afrikaans word, and it basically means a stone. It's the best translation for it. And a bok means a buck, so it's basically a stone buck in English. And the reason why it gets that name is because often you'll find a Steenbok lying in the grass, and it will have its sort of back hunched over and its head down, and it looks like just a little stone sticking out of the grass. And so it's really well camouflaged for that reason, and hence the name came Steenbok. But that's very nice of this little one to stay still for us. It's not often that they do. You can see it's doing a bit of ruminating. Hello, little one. Now out here, the leopards don't often catch them. They're very, very fast, very agile animals, and so the main threat for a Steenbok in this area is threefold. So it's either the wild dogs that we saw earlier. They love to chase Steenbok. The other one is the cheetah, so the two cheetah brothers on cheetah plains, they would chase these quite a lot. And the other threat that happens for a Steenbok, well actually another two, is the python and then a martial eagle. Now the martial eagles are the biggest eagle we have here, and they'll often fly around looking for Steenbok, and they come flying down and then they grab that Steenbok by the back and then take it up into the tree. So even though that is quite a heavy animal, it's incredible that there is an eagle that's able to hunt them. But thank you very much, Miss Steenbok. That was very kind of you. We'll call her a Miss because we're not sure if there's a Mister yet, so we can't call her a Mrs. Maybe we'll spot the Mister just now and then we'll have to change that. But like I said, I'm going to slowly head towards the hyena den. Now that it's warmed up a bit, maybe the little ones are out and playing in the sunshine. It was a very cool start to the day, so maybe they were a little bit cold and they now are going to come out and just get some sun to warm up their bodies. So I'm going to head in that direction in the hope that they are potentially there. It It'll be nice to see those little ones again. It's been a while since I've seen them. I'm sure they've grown massively since then. Right, now we're going to carry on, like I say, towards the hyena den. We're going to see if the little ones are out enjoying and basking in some sunshine. And while we do that, let's go across to James Hendry, who also loves to bask in some sunshine and is apparently with another member of the Big Five.
I am sitting here, everybody, trying to bask in the sunshine. Unfortunately, there's a really chilly breeze blowing from the south, but that is our first herd of buffalo for goodness knows how long. It is a vast herd of buffalo standing on Mala Mala, unfortunately not over here on Cheetah Plains, but it's coming this way, so it might eventually spend a bit of time over here on Cheetah Plains. Isn't that nice to see? So they're coming up from the south now. The plains of the southern Sabi sand, where the gabbro has given rise to huge swathes of red grass, which is very good for the buffalo, has now turned to straw, and so the buffalo are now coming back towards the north in what I suppose might be described as a localized migration, although it's certainly not anything like what the migrations in this area used to be. Isn't that nice? The colours are also very beautiful. The yellowy green late summer grass with the dark jet black buffalo just sort of floating through it like small boats. Hello Cat Studies, you're wondering if those are Cape buffalo or not. Well, yes, they are called Cape buffalo. They are not called water buffalo. Those are found in Asia. And often people come here and say, "Oh, there's a water buffalo!" And we have to say patiently, no, it is not a water buffalo, it is a Cape buffalo, as Cat Studies has pointed out to us. I don't use the term Cape very often. I don't know why. Well, I do know, it's because we know we're near the Cape. But they are called Cape buffalo, that's absolutely correct. And I'm not sure why they're called Cape buffalo as opposed to just African buffalo. Because, of course, they're found all over southern Africa, into Central Africa, and of course into East Africa. Kirk, you say maybe we can see a kill here. Well, Kirk, maybe we can. Kirk, that is of course an eventuality that could occur any time out here. I think it's unlikely though, because I think that those buffalo would be looking slightly more nervous if they were being surrounded by a pride of lions. It's not impossible that there is a coalition of male lions, the Birmingham boys, in that area, about to leap on one of them. I just think it's unlikely, though. I don't think that they're around here at the moment. But that is an interesting thought, Kirk. I'm very pleased to see them back here. I must say it's been some time since we've spent any time with the buffalo. I thought of something crucial now, and I've now forgotten what it was. What was I saying? Cape buffalo, up into Central Africa, East Africa. No, it's gone. We will also see these things, of course, when we go to the Mara. And they there are much bigger horned-wise than they are here. Otherwise they're the same size. But their horns tend to be much larger and heavily built than the horns here. Jason, what a nice question from you. And, well, it really depends on your perspective. You say, can evolution make mistakes? Oh, there we are. There's some free advertising. Evolution makes mistakes all the time. Most of them result in death. And therefore, the animal, whatever mistake is made doesn't perpetuate. But it cannot make mistakes in terms of creating a species that shouldn't be there, for example. So the evolution by natural selection means that any mutation that causes an advantage will be passed on into the population, and that may eventually result in a new species. If that was a mistake, if there was any mistake from that point of view, that if there was any mutation that did not confer an advantage, that did not give an advantage to the individual that received the mutation, then that individual would either die or be unable to reproduce as successfully as individuals that didn't have the mutation. And so from that perspective, no, evolution cannot make a mistake. Any animal that is alive today is exceptionally lucky, is an exceptional product of evolution. And where millions of others, or millions of countless mutations have resulted in death, some have resulted in new species. Most of those new species have not survived up till now. So you can feel very privileged to be part of the suite of species all the way from unicellular bacteria up to the complexity of our own brains and bodies. And what you find then is, despite how many millions of species there are here in the world, there have been countless other millions that have gone extinct. And so, no, evolution doesn't make mistakes. The climate can change and conditions can change, which can result in a certain species becoming extinct, but that's not an evolutionary mistake. Nice question, that. Let's head across to Tristan. He has managed to find something that probably came out of one end of a hyena.
Well, I'm pretty sure that it did, but I think it's actually out the front end, not the back end, James. Now, what we came to the hyena den, and there's no activity, but there is piles and piles of hair that is all over the place. Now, I think that it's probably hair that has been regurgitated, so you can see it. It's all, this whole area over here is hair, so it's all bits and pieces. Now, I reckon that this is where the little ones have started to be introduced to meat, maybe, and they've eaten, and they just can't cope with that hair, so they've then coughed it up, and it's then been excreted through the mouth via a fur ball, basically. Now, at first I was a bit worried. As I pulled up, I thought maybe this was the crime scene for one of these young ones being killed, but it's not the same fur. There's no spots on it. It's quite a sort of drab brown color, so I would imagine that this fur is probably from something like a duiker or maybe even Impala, but once it passes through the gut, it tends to change color a little bit. It doesn't have that same brightness that you see on the animal itself, but there is quite a lot of it, so whatever it was, it definitely got a lot of plucking from a hyena. Now I wonder if this wasn't stolen from another predator and then brought back to the den for these little ones to start feeding. It is about the time that they're going to be starting to get introduced to meat, and what you'll find is generally with lower ranking females, they actually take their young ones to the food, but and that's normally because of the competition at the den, because there's often higher ranking females that have their young ones, and if they do that and the lower ranking female brings food, the higher ranking cubs are going to eat that food. Whereas with this den, even though Ribbon is not a high ranking female in this clan, there's no competition here. There's no other young ones that are in this den at the moment, so she can actually bring food here and allow the little ones to feed off it. So interesting just to see the dynamics and how things change according to the different den sites. But that is a serious amount of fur, so whatever it was quite a good meal that they had, which is exciting times. So Rebecca, you're asking whether anyone has seen hyenas at the den since Byron had that crazy encounter the other night. Well, yes, we have. So Jamie saw the young ones, was it last night or the night before? She saw the two cubs at the hole. Ribbon wasn't here, but she saw the two cubs coming out just around sunset. So the two cubs are still here, but I haven't seen Ribbon since then, and she hasn't been around. But the cubs look healthy. I saw the footage of Jamie sighting, and the cubs looked fat and healthy. So I'm sure she is around. There's tracks also of adult hyenas in this area, so I think all is okay. It's the funny thing with the hyena den is it's very unpredictable. You've got to kind of try and come multiple times during a drive, and sometimes you're going to see them, sometimes you're not. And the reason for that is, especially with this den, is that there is only one female with her 2 cubs. If you go to a den where you've got multiple females, multiple cubs, then generally there's activity most mornings and afternoons because there's some adult that is there, and therefore the cubs then come out and play around. This particular den, because if Ribbon's not around, the cubs won't be out, then it changes the whole dynamic. And also around the den itself, their favorite sort of shady tree, which is this big one on my right hand side that you can see over there, that's fallen over, means that there's very little shade around the mound itself. So Ribbon could be here, but she could just be lying off to the side somewhere where there's a bit of shade that she can then utilize, especially now that it's getting a little bit warm. But yes, it is still active. The tracks that I see here are fresh, they're from last night, so it is still active indeed. Now what interests me and intrigues me is that sort of meeting that Byron had the other day was quite intense. I watched the footage, and it was really quite an amazing sighting that he had. But it intrigues me as to where those others are, what are they doing, and whether or not they've got their own mound that they're busy utilizing, or if there's any sort of sign of young ones. I saw that Corky the other day, she's not producing milk, so I don't know if Madam is. I haven't seen any sort of signs of Madam for the last few days. I know she was at that sighting with Byron, but I wonder if they're not utilizing a den fairly close by, and that's why there was this interaction. Maybe they heard one another and they then came in and we saw that incredible sighting that Byron had. I still think that it's somewhere inside this same area, because the hyena tracks that we always see every single day are going in and out of here, and it's not just for Ribbon. There's multiple different hyenas that are walking in and out of here. So I think it's somewhere in this general vicinity. There might be another place. It might not be a den, but a place that these hyenas are using to rest up during the day. Just a matter of time until we find them. We'll have to just keep going on foot in these areas and eventually bump into it. Priscilla, the hyena cubs depends on their ranking, but generally they are joining the clan at about a year old is when they're out and about a lot. At about 8 months they start leaving the den and start pushing a little bit and starting to explore, but at about a year old is when they start to actually really run around quite a bit. Now there's a beautiful bird sitting in this tree ahead of me. Unfortunately it's got its back to us at the moment, which is not ideal. So it's a lilac-breasted roller that's in this fallen over marula, just straight in this dead tree, right? Top up a little bit, there we go, in the middle there it is. So these lilac-breasted rollers, now we are starting to notice them a lot more now that the European rollers have left. So some of you may have seen those European rollers. We had so many this year. It was great to see them, but they've all left now to travel back to northern Africa and Europe, and the lilac-breasted rollers are on display again. So they're out and about a lot more than what they were when the European rollers are here. It's not that they're not here, it's just that we overlook them a lot more because the Europeans are bigger and bulkier. They also are a powder blue color, and the Europeans will dominate the lilac-breasted rollers a bit. They'll take all the prime perches because of their size, and so the rollers take the lilac-breasted roller takes a back seat in those summer months for a bit, and now in the winter they really are everywhere. But they are exquisite birds. They've got those bright iridescent blue feathers on the wing and onto the stomach, and in that lilac throat and breast area, and then the little white on the top there. So really pretty. From the back like this, their wings are actually brown, so they don't have as much color as if it turned and faced us, but I'm hoping that it might fly, and if it does fly, then we'll see those electric blue wings as it takes off. And you'll find that the rollers will spend a lot of time like this, particularly early morning, late afternoon, especially now as we start going into the winter months. It gets very, very cold, and so they'll sit on an open branch like that where they're able to then absorb some sun and get nice and warm again after a cold night. And then from there, it's also a great place to fly and hawk insects. So as insects are emerging off the grass as it warms up, so we know butterflies and beetles and these kind of things will start to fly as soon as it starts to warm up a little bit. And so from there it can take off without any hindrance of leaves or any sort of obstructions, and can come down, grab that insect, and then go back onto its perch to feed. So lilac-breasted rollers do love a good open tree like this with a bit of space to be able to fly. But you can see a little bit on that tummy, those turquoise feathers as well. Absolutely magnificent bird. Alright buddy, well I'm going to try and see, I'm hoping it doesn't fly, but so James, sorry, I didn't catch the last bit of your question, but I think it goes along the lines of how often do servals or caracals hunt migrating birds? I think that's what Alice said. I'm not 100% sure, but servals and murmuration. That's right. Sorry. So I'm not sure, to be honest, James. We just don't see servals and caracals enough to know the answer to that. I have never spent time in an area where those are common sighting, or animals that are commonly sighted. So some of the guys that maybe have spent time in the Kalahari in terms of the caracals, and then in the central areas of Kruger where the servals, and now that we're going up into the Masai Mara, there's lots of servals up there and caracals. So maybe we'll start to actually see whether or not they do hunt birds that are murmurating. But I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. The evidence that we see of dead birds where feathers have been plucked is not that common. So I mean, we do see it, but there could be a number of suspects that are out here for that. So there could be leopard, it could be caracal, it could be serval, it could be genet, it could be civet. So there's a number of different land-based mammals that hunt birds, and so the sort of crime scenes that we find of bird feathers is not that often. So I don't think that they are that good at doing it, although you never know. In my experience, the servals that I've watched here, mostly what they hunt is mice. So at night, you'll find them sitting in a sort of grassy area, and they use those big ears just to listen. And as soon as a mouse runs, they then pounce and grab them. So the servals tend to feed a lot off mice. I know caracals are far more prone to hunting birds and being able to jump to hunt them, but honestly, I've never seen a caracal in the Sabi Sands, so if I answered your question like that, I would be lying to you. So I'm not 100% sure, but like I say, maybe now when we're in Kenya from the sort of 1st of June, we'll be able to follow some caracals or servals, and we'll be able to get a better understanding of whether or not they do go after birds a lot more. Right, so while we bumble along and try and see if there's anything else around here, we're going to go and have a look at Treehouse Dam, see if there's anything that's drinking. Let's go across to James Hendry, who's also bumbling along and is copying our routine.
I am absolutely copying their routine, everybody. I am bumbling along. I did see, however, a Wahlberg's eagle flying high up above, so I said that they'd left, and I think some of them have, but at least one of them still remains here in South Africa. I'm sure it's not the only one. Maybe it was just making its soaring flight before it goes off north. There's a great deal of bush on the road here. Now this is the area where I had the female leopard tracks coming down towards. If she's killed something, maybe she's pulled it into a tree, who knows. At this stage, it's very much hit and miss, because to be following tracks at this time of the morning, well, it's not very easy. The buffalo disappeared into a bush, and I think they'll probably come up towards this area sometime during the day, and perhaps they will bring with them some cheetah. Not the cheetah, of course, would eat buffalo. And if we stop here, I'm just going to stop here. And what you can see is the sort of shifting of the trees, because there's quite a lot of wind blowing here. Hello, Chris US. You're wondering about how it is that we prepare to present in a whole new area that we're perhaps not very familiar with. Chris, the way we prepare to present in an area we don't know is the same way that you'd prepare to do a new job anywhere. You read. You hopefully read sufficiently so that by the time you get there, you have a basic understanding of the system that you're working in. So, I mean, you're obviously talking about the Mara. I have a lot of reading to get done with regard to how that ecosystem functions. And then it just has to be experienced. But because we'll go on that experience together, although I will not be the most knowledgeable person in the world of the Mara when I get there, I will have a basic understanding of the ecosystem. I'd have looked at the birds that occur there and the animals and that sort of thing and read about them. And then we go on this process of discovery where we find out and learn about what we've read being true or untrue, We start to piece together the things that we've read in practice, and that's basically how we learn to do it. You don't have to have the most in-depth knowledge in the world to be able to be amazed by a place, and that's initially what it will be for all of us, I think, including you. We'll all be so amazed by being there that we'll learn together, and then, 2 or 3 years down the line, much as it is with here, our information and our examination of the area will become that much. Hello. Don't run away, please. You look very pretty standing in the grass there. Right, apparently we're going across to Tristan, who's got something that is having a swim.
I do indeed, James. So I thought after watching Shongile and Hosanna this morning and talking about terrapins, we would show you what they actually look like for those of you who have not seen one. And for those of you that have, well, terrapins still are quite fascinating little creatures. And this guy is having a wonderful time. It looks like James Henry sunbathing in the sun. He's got his sort of shell out, he's got his legs out, head up, enjoying the bit of breeze and a bit of warmth that is coming down. So that is one happy terrapin. Almost looks like you just need to give it a pina colada in front of it and it will be very happy. Now, most of the terrapins we see here are the serrated hingeback terrapins. Those are the ones that we see a lot of. And you'll find in water sources that, like where we are now, there's quite a number of them. And it's exactly what I was saying to you earlier when Shongile was hunting, is this is what she's waiting for. She's waiting for an unsuspecting terrapin to come up onto a bank or close to the water's edge, that she can then grab it and be able to catch it and eat it. Now, if she had to catch a terrapin of that size, she's going to struggle a little bit to get through its shell. The smaller terrapins, the shell is a little bit softer. It's easier for her to break it. That terrapin would be very difficult. So if you want an idea of kind of how big that terrapin is, if you look just to the right at the bottom of the screen, there's a big pile of elephant dung. Now, the elephant dung is probably, I would say, about the size of, what can we use as a relative size? Just trying to think what sort of ball would be. Maybe a bowling ball, a little bit smaller than a bowling ball, but it would be about that size. That terrapin is quite large, and it's going to have a very, very, very hard shell, and so Shongile will really battle to get into that. So that's a little bit big for her. She'll be aiming for the slightly smaller ones, which are easier to devour. But as she grows and she gets bigger and her jaws develop and her muscles in her jaws develop, so then she'll be able to start going on to that. But by the time that happens, she'll be hopefully hunting bigger, larger prey animals, so things like impalas and that Steenbok that we saw earlier would fit the bill much better than a terrapin, and I'm sure taste a lot better. For any of you that have ever been anywhere near a terrapin, the smell that emanates from one of those when they are under threat is quite something. It is a foul, foul smell, and not something you want to come across very often. Alright, Mr. Terrapin, enjoy your day. I hope that your sunbathing goes well. Now, Sherry, you're wondering what the minimum count of calories for a leopard is per day. Sherry, I honestly have no idea. I think it's a difficult thing to calculate. I would imagine that there is probably a figure somewhere out there, but out here, what we see with leopards is sometimes they'll go 4 or 5 days without consuming anything. So it's possible that they can survive without a certain amount, but I suppose you would then have to average what they've eaten in terms of a big impala over the time period until they feed again. But to be honest, I have no idea. I'm not 100% sure what the answer to that would be. I don't know if anybody else out there knows the answer and can help me out, so you can send it to #SafariLive on Twitter, and maybe we can get an idea exactly how many calories a leopard needs. That's the best part about this job, is that you learn every single day. So even as a guide with guests, your learning curve is sort of, it goes, and it's as you spend time out here, so experience helps and you end up learning a little bit, and if you are proactive about things, then you tend to learn. But Safari Live is really, it's been quite a steep learning curve in that there's so many different aspects that you've got to cover, and we tend to go a lot more in depth about things. So calories that a leopard would need to consume is honestly the first time I've ever been asked that, so I will definitely try and go and research it. But the best part about it is that we learn also with the viewers. So some of you out there that help us, and we all learn together. It creates such a nice experience for everybody. So hopefully somebody out there can help us with the amount of calories a leopard needs. I'm just bumbling along at the moment. I was at Treehouse Dam. I was hoping for some elephants there, but while I'm bumbling along, I'm also just checking in case for any signs of Karula. You never know. Maybe she pops out, and I'm driving all the routes that she likes to hang around in and walk around in, but alas, so far no tracks. But we shall cling on to hope and see. Maybe we get lucky and she pops out somewhere. I really hope that is the case, and that she does show herself at some point. This is an area that she used to spend a lot of time with the cubs. A lot. They used to walk from sort of Shabamu Pans and Treehouse. Used to spend a lot of time in these marulas. It was always quite nice to drive along and find Karula draped along the marulas that line this road. So maybe we'll get lucky and she'll appear. It's been that kind of morning. We've had such a spectacular day that it would be just fitting if Karula showed herself towards the end of the drive. Roger, so this is the burning question that everybody is asking and everybody sort of is wondering about, and you're asking what are the odds that Karula is still alive? Well, I mean, I don't know. It's possible that she's just somewhere else, but I think every day that goes by the odds are decreasing into the side of her not being alive, or I mean increasing that she's no longer alive. It's just so strange. And in my time, in my experience here in the Sabi Sands, I've never seen a leopard just disappear like this away from her cubs and her territory for such an extended period of time without being missing. It's not that it won't happen, and it can't happen. I've seen it with lions. Lions do it every now and then, but leopards, it's very seldom. And the fact is that we really haven't picked up any concrete sign of her. So there's been very little in the way of tracks. We haven't seen anything. We've surmised that there's been tracks, but they're all on peripheries and boundaries of our property where other females roam as well. So it's very possible that they could just be the other females now. As much as we would all like to think that we know tracks that well, it's almost impossible unless there's a key identifying feature to differentiate between one female and another, particularly given that the females that surround this area are all Karula's cubs. So I'm not sure. I really don't know. Like I say, every day that we go, it's a day towards her not being around. So Diego, you're saying that the last time we saw Karula, the wild dogs were around. What are the chances of her being caught by the wild dogs and being killed? Well, Diego, I mean, it is very possible that the wild dogs could have got her and could potentially have attacked her. But the commotion around that and the sound that would have been produced would have meant that somebody would have probably picked it up. You must remember that the area that we're in is a number of game drive vehicles out here, so a number of tourist lodges where people come out and see these animals. And so Karula's territory lies pretty much on Djuma and then southwards into a lot of other commercial areas. So even though Little Gowrie is not a commercial lodge, there are a number of vehicles that are on Little Gowrie, Elephant Plains, Arathusa, Chitwa, Simbambili. There is lots, Jackie's Sabi House. They all traverse on Little Gowrie and those areas around there. So had an interaction like that taken place, I would have assumed a lot of people would have heard it. And if it had taken place during night time, which is unlikely because the dogs are not nearly as active during the night, then we would have found some sort of tracks. You must remember, when we drive on the roads, we would have found tracks for dogs, and those dog tracks would have been followed as much as possible, and that would have then potentially led us to where maybe Karula was attacked. But so I don't think it was them. My gut feel is that it was more likely to be lions than anything else, or hyenas. One of those two would be a far more credible threat, but who knows? I mean, I've seen leopards in this area die from snake bites, so it is possible. Now we do have a monkey that's now jumped away. So Alex, I mean, being nature, and if Karula did die around the period that she's disappeared, then the chances of us finding any sign of her is very, very slim. It also depends if she was killed, where she was killed, because at the end of the day, we would have found a situation where if it's in maybe Buffelshoek or Manyeleti, southern Manyeleti, there's very little action that's happening out there and a lot less vehicles driving around, and so the likelihood of her being found would be very little. Here on Djuma and on Little Gowrie, it's a much more likely that we would find it, just because if it had been lions we would have followed those tracks. Also, if there'd been lots of vulture activity or hyena activity, we would have probably tried to check around that area. And as we're walking around now and when we go through the winter months, potentially this grass is all going to die and we might find a skeletal structure for a predator, and it could then be sort of determined what happened, but I don't think so. It's going to be very difficult. Scavengers are going to come in, hyenas will come in, they'll dismember that carcass and they will kind of spread it about. So unless we find a skull, it's going to be very difficult to pinpoint where if she is indeed dead or what actually happened to her. Like I say, I mean, maybe we're all just wrong and we're being pessimistic and she actually shows up somewhere completely randomly and we find her, which would be really, really special if that was the case. But I don't know. I mean, I just, like I say, it's very odd that there's just not a single sign of her. I would accept if there was tracks of this individual moving around and walking around and we just couldn't find her, then maybe yes, we could say she might have some sort of cubs that she's after or whatever the case may be. But there's just been absolutely no sign. There's been no footprints, and that's the sort of distressing part about it. But like I say, you never know with wildlife. She could be checking other areas because of the loss of Shaluva to the north. There might be an open section that she's now patrolling in Manyeleti and is up there, and she's been mating potentially up there with another male, and that's why she's been gone for so long. These things happen, so it's very possible that she might be up there. But like I say, as the days go on, so we'll end up with a situation that it's more and more likely that she's no longer with us. So, White Lady Eon, you're asking if she could have died of old age even though she wasn't that old. Well, no. So the last time Karula was seen, she was healthy, she was fit, she was strong, she was not carrying any visible injuries, her teeth were still in good condition, claws are still in good condition, and being an experienced leopard the way that she is, she would have ground out an existence, much like her mother. Safari went to the ripe old age of about 18, 19 years old, and by the end she was literally skin and bone, but she was still finding a way to find food. She was hunting lizards and terrapins, much like what Shangila is doing. She just reverted back to that. So Karula, with all her experience, I highly, highly doubt that she would have just died from 13 years of age. It's a very young age for a leopard to be dying of natural causes. But you never know. Maybe something happened. Maybe she had some sort of a disease that we didn't know about. It's possible that she may have caught something, and like this, rabies or something like that. So these things do happen, and ultimately we don't find her on every single carcass. So it's possible she might have got one of those, but we would have seen symptoms of rabies. So I don't think it could be that. So you never know. I mean, it is possible, but I don't think so. Generally, you'll find a situation where a female is very, very sort of sick. She'll lose condition, and we will have seen that losing of condition before she passes away. So I don't think that's the case. I think more likely it's another predator conflict if she has indeed disappeared, or she's just checking out a new territory. So those are my two opinions. Now I'm going to carry on and start slowly heading back towards Amanda's delicious breakfast. It's that time of the day where it's slowly time to start heading back, but we're still a long way out, so we'll see you all just now. But I believe Jamie has decided it's the perfect moment to be like the terrapin and sunbathe in the sun.
Well, sort of half in the sun and half in the shade. I have to say it's actually getting quite warm, and it seemed like an appropriate moment to sit in the shade and just take a small break after our rather serious trek all the way around, trying to figure out where on earth these leopard tracks have gone. And the only conclusion we're left with is that they've gone onto Simbambili, which unfortunately, I know you've been having this conversation with Tristan, unfortunately probably means that they are Shadow's tracks and not Karula's. We don't know for certain. I still think she's going to pop out one day when we least expect it. All of a sudden she'll just be there. But that's what I've been doing, is sitting in the shade and contemplating both that and the sheer strength of an elephant. that managed to uproot this bush willow. Bush willow is one of the hardest trees in terms of wood that we get out here. It's only really topped by leadwood and by zebrawood. It's part of the same family as a leadwood. Now, they are absolutely massive trees, and just look at the way that this elephant has completely uprooted it, pushed it over. Imagine the weight, not just of the tree, obviously the tree is a heavy thing, but imagine the weight of the soil and the roots that this elephant must have pushed over, and the power to snap those roots in one smooth movement, pushing this tree over. I don't think we even begin to comprehend just how impressive a feat this really is. Imagine each of these roots desperately gripping on in the soil, and every single one has been snapped, and some of them have been chewed on a little bit. Now, it's not fresh and it's not a revelation, but sometimes I think we need to just stop and take a moment to appreciate how strong these creatures really are, and just how capable they are of these massive feats of power. The nice thing about this bush willow is that it's not dead. It's one of the amazing things about resilient bush willows, is that they are actually capable of surviving, provided that there's still some roots in the ground, which there are. This tree is actually still vibrantly alive, and what you'll find, watch over the live safaris over the next few years, the way that these branches grow is going to change, and they're going to start growing vertically again. And what you'll get is a situation where you've got this tree over to the side, but the branches are growing completely upright and vertical. And I find that amazing as well. The sheer resilience of something like this, that it has a third, if that, of the root structure that it used to have, and it's still supporting this enormous, enormous tree. Amazing, isn't it? But that's how this whole ecosystem has evolved. It's evolved to be this way, to have that existence or coexistence between things like elephants and these massive trees. Right, now I've got to get down here, Dave, so do you. As Dave goes tumbling backwards down the steep drop into the road. It's easier for me. I don't have to have a camera. Now, if we look over here, what I'm looking for is an example of what I've just told you about. The way in which a tree's been pushed over and then grown upright. This is probably the closest example. Different species. Variable bush willow, rather than a red bush willow like that one. But it's been pushed over, and in this situation, if we have a look at these branches here, you can see they're growing vertically up. Not all of them, but a lot of them growing vertically upwards from the horizontal limb. That is fascinating. We've just done a whole discussion about trees, Dave and myself. Look what Herbie made me. Wait, hold on, no, I don't want to take it apart actually. Yeah. Herbie made me another one because I lost the first one he made me. A bracelet. Cool. Bracelet, courtesy of a silver cluster leaf that Herbie made in a split second, a couple of minutes. He made that for me. This one is not going to disappear. Now, lightning guy, did I get that right? Lightning guy, you want to know what fruit trees grow out here in the wild. Marula trees. There's a marula tree. Marula trees, like that. Oh, sorry, Dave. I just shoulder charge you out the way. I want to be on camera. No, I don't. The marula tree is a massive marula tree over here. As I gently shove Dave out of the way. Sorry, Dave.
No, it's my fault.
No, it was entirely mine. And tackle him to the ground. That is a marula tree. Creates the most delicious fruit of any of them out here. Really, really lovely. It only happens once a year around February, and during that time, woe betide the ignorant person that walks beneath a marula tree, because you'll get bonked on the head by its falling fruits that are roughly the size of a golf ball, and if they're not ripe, roughly the same weight and consistency. Then we get jackalberries. Jackalberries create quite nice fruit. Guarri bushes, whiteberry bushes. There's something obvious I'm forgetting. Sour plums, really nice fruit. sour, as you may have guessed. Now, Gary, just talking about that, of course, because elephants will love anything that's fruiting. You want to know, why do elephants push over trees? It depends on the tree, it depends on the time of year. Most of the time, what they're looking to get to is the root system underneath the tree, because especially in winter, that is when they're really desperate for water and desperate for nutrients, and the roots of the tree is, of course, where it stores its starch and its water. So they'll use it to get to the roots. During springtime, the best and the freshest leaves are at the top, and sometimes it is the situation that they just are after the leaves at the top, and they don't particularly feel like eating the leaves on the bottom, and then everybody can have a little bit of a nibble around the edges. I wonder whether or not James is capable of knocking over any trees.
You wonder if James is capable of knocking over any trees. I would have thought that highly unlikely. There is a wildebeest, and this poor fellow, I think, has been excluded from the herd. I saw his lonely tracks down at Treehouse Dam yesterday when I was on my walk. And I think that he is a youngish bull, and he's been unable to sort of assert himself, if you like, on the big herd that's been on quarantine, and I suspect he's been chased out by the big fellow that lives there. There's a magnificent bull in amongst that herd. Don't worry, you too will one day be a magnificent bull, fear not. And I think you'll find that he should find himself some Impala to be around. But it's a little bit more difficult than it is at other times of the year for a wildebeest to be around the Impala, because they, of course, are now in the middle of the rut. And that means that the males are not being particularly friendly to each other. They're running around, they're herding the females, and it's all just probably a bit emotionally draining for a poor chap, wildebeest bull, who's looking towards the hyena den. I'm not going anywhere near the hyena den, however, because I'm, well, rather tired of going to the hyena den and finding nothing there. See, he's nodding. He's saying, yes, I am looking towards the hyena den. Can you see a hyena? Can you? He's not answering at the moment. He seems unable to answer me. I had a very nice Twitter handle here, Crested Gecko. Well, Crested Gecko, you say, are there black wildebeest here? Crested Gecko, there are not black wildebeest here. Black wildebeest occur on the Highveld. Now, the Highveld is the highlands of South Africa, and they occur sort of on the plateaus, middle plateaus, and they tend to occur in slightly drier areas quite often. But definitely more high-lying grasslands rather than the low-lying grasslands and woodlands. And the black wildebeest is a very different-looking creature for those of you who don't know. I mean, obviously this one, which is called the blue wildebeest, is not blue, it is black. And the black wildebeest is ironically also black. And it's got a white tail and then a white mane, which this one obviously does not. Now, the brindled gnu of eastern Africa, so the one that does that great big migration, also has a whitish tail and a white beard, but not quite as white as the black wildebeest. And here is a picture for you. Here we have both of them. There is the fellow you've been looking at there, the brindled gnu or blue gnu, and that's what the black wildebeest looks like. I must say, I think that colour is incorrect. I've seen them many times. They are white there and white on the tail, and that's what they look like, but they just don't occur here, and they're completely different species and are probably unable to interbreed with each other. All right, we're going to go from this very singular and on his own brindled gnu across to a vast and teeming majestic herd with Tristan.
Well, James, a vast teeming herd would be maybe a stretch of the imagination. We'll have to save that link for when you're up in the Masai Mara and those millions of wildebeest are coming down and crossing the rivers. What we have here is our little Djuma quarantine herd that is only, I would say at the moment, about 5 individuals, so not exactly a vast teeming herd, but still it is nice to see them. They seem to be spending a lot of time here. It would be nice if the McCurdy herdie came back and we had them all together again, because it's really nice when we've got the wildebeest and the zebra all roaming around on the open area. It kind of reminds you a little bit of East Africa when you see that. Not that it's in any way close in scale. But you can see some of the young ones are having a little dust bath, so they've been rolling around in the road there. It's the perfect place for a wildebeest to roll. The sand in this particular area is nice and soft, so when they roll, lots of dust gets on them, which helps exfoliate the skin and just keep them in good condition. And you can actually see where the sun is hitting them, how they are shining. They really are looking great at the moment. So it's been a good summer in that regard for wildebeest and zebra to just regain some of their weight and start to look a little bit better. So Rebecca, sorry, I didn't get the first part of your question. I know it's something to do with their colour, but Alice, if you can just repeat that for me. Wrinkly. So you want to know if they're wrinkly. Well, no, they're not wrinkly. They just have slightly longer sections of fur, which causes a brindling to happen, which is why the other name for this wildebeest is a brindled gnu. But yes, it's not actually a wrinkly animal. It's not like the elephants. They have wrinkles all over their body. These guys just have areas of longer fur. Now, the reason for that is still undecided. Some people reckon it's to do with thermoregulation, so patches of lighter and dark means that it causes air to be coming over it, and the darker areas will give off more heat and therefore cool the animal down. So apparently that's the situation, but I've read an article which blew that completely out the water and said that it makes no difference whatsoever. And now we've got a face-off of the two youngsters. And I heard James earlier was talking about wildebeest and impalas, and it's almost like James is the wildebeest, although he's far brighter than what the wildebeest are. And Brent Leo Smith is the impala, the crazy, loud hooligan running around while James just watches. It feels like that scenario. It's quite entertaining to watch the two of them in camp together. They are both equally entertaining characters. And you can see, I think it's all too much for that little wildebeest. Going to stand up now and rub our head. So you see it's already getting that marking of territory with those orbital glands, so when he gets older he'll know exactly what's going on. Right, unfortunately that's all we've got time for this morning. It's been a fantastic morning with lions, wild dogs, leopards. So from myself and Rowan, James and Senzo, thank you very much, and we'll see you all on our sunset safari this afternoon at 3:30.